So, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how Apple revolutionized the iPad market with the first three iPads. So first here we have the iPad 1, which was such a staple back in 2010. But they actually wanted to release it in 2004. But that's when they realized they had to scratch because Android touchscreen phones were coming up in the market, which led them to eventually make the iPhone 2G, and soon after that, what is known as the iPad. So looking at this design on the back, we are introduced with no back-facing camera, but an Apple logo. And this was the first iPad to actually introduce a headphone and a 30-pin connector. And wow, when we turn it on, we are greeted with a 480p and iOS 5 as well. This was just so intuitive to use back then. All the cool animations, like look at the newsstand, that's sick. And look at the map, you can peel the paper like it's paper-like. This was just so cool. Now this iPad was paired with 256 megabytes of RAM and 16 and 32 gigabyte storage options. And at the time, Android tablets were getting quite popular. More and more so, they decided to switch from crappy Windows tablets to actual Android user interface, which then led Apple to create the iPad, which shattered that out of the park. Because people were having such a fun time using this and thought that this was a great device. So, meaning that the iPad took 85% of the tablet market share, which absolutely astonished the users because of how intuitive this was. And this became essentially the next device that they were going to carry with them for like the next few years, essentially replacing their laptop and phone altogether. But you know what Apple did next? They absolutely smashed the competitors out of the park when releasing the iPad 2, which introduced three key main features that revolutionized how iPads look today. The first one being they actually added a back-facing camera. Now, the back-facing camera was only 0.7 megapixels, but to have that at all was actually insane. It also introduced a 0.2 megapixel front-facing camera, which led to the invention of photo booth to celebrate those two key features being built in. Now, another feature is not a feature, but if we compare the iPad 1 and iPad 2, we can see that the iPad 1 went from being 11 millimeters thick from the iPad 2 being only 8 millimeters thick, meaning they decreased the thickness by 4 millimeters by using 3 flatter batteries instead of 1 thicker. And as you can see, we are greeted with the same 480p display, but now iOS 9, because this thing was not stuck to one operating system. This thing could kit up all the way to iOS 9. And as you can see, this looks so much cleaner, so much refined and improved. You can see this actually looks more like an iPad now, and less like something from an alien spaceship. And boy oh boy, did this take 93% of the iPad market share, and the tablet market share, sorry. Even more so that this became more of an icon than the actual iPad 1 itself, meaning people recognize this today as the actually big iPad that led to the Apple jump. And using this felt even more intuitive. I know it's iCloud locked, but still, come on. You can't say that this is not nostalgic. You know, if you had these one back in the day, you were considered an early iPad kid, but you know, that's just pure nostalgia, not actual iPad kids today. So would I say this is a huge improvement? Absolutely. This new design actually led to so many other companies wanting the desire to copy that. But no, Apple had copyrighted this, meaning no other companies could be a lethal competitor. But what did Apple do next? Well, they made a refined version of this, but I wouldn't say, you know, knocking out of the park. Which from 2011 on, which was this May, they made the iPad 3. Okay, I promise you this is the iPad 3. So what they changed about the design? Absolutely nothing. You could not tell that this looks absolutely identical to the iPad 2. Apart from that black thing, which you can get on the iPad 3. So if you had the exact same, they look absolutely identical. But from going 256 megabytes of RAM to 512, and they still had the 0.7 megapixel camera, and the 0.8 megapixel, 0.2 megapixel front facing, and you could kit this thing up to 64 gigabytes of storage now. But what surprised me the most is what Apple named it. You might have think they named this the iPad 3, right? No, maybe the third generation iPad, or maybe even tablet, third gen. Nope, they named this the new iPad. Yeah, the new iPad. Hey man, I just got the new iPad. You got the new iPad. Yeah man, I got the new iPad 3 years ago. So you got the new iPad 3 years ago. You know, it's not technically the new iPad, but this is new iPad, if you know what I mean. What the? Yeah, so people were really confused what naming system Apple decided to give this iPad. But cosmetically, you know, this looked identical. And people didn't really ask for an upscaled iPad that looked identical. But the one main feature that this brought was a Retina display, which if you put them side by side, the iPad 3 looks so much better because you have that Retina display with less pixels. And that was a huge jump in clarity from going the iPad 2 to the iPad 3. Now, cosmetically, they looked almost identical, exactly identical. Like you cannot tell the difference. Like I have them two side by side. Apart from this, you would not be able to tell the difference. But it's just the feel and aesthetic that made this feel so good. But apart from Retina display, nobody really asked for a rebranded iPad 2. So nobody really bought it that much. And Android tablets were rising at this time. They were making smaller versions, larger versions. Even Samsung was stepping into the market here, making what led to become the Galaxy Tab, which at the time skyrocketed in sales, which ultimately led to the iPad 3 downfall. Now, the iPad 2 was being sold up until the 2014, which outperformed the 3 and the 4 being released in the same year. And 2012 is kind of a staple for Apple because that's when they released the iPhone 5. And that led to the release of the Lightning case. Now, Apple ultimately did end up coming back later on, but it was in this moment in time they know they had screwed up. They did not need a redesign of the iPad 2 with just a Retina display, but the updated specs were a nice touch, even though this was literally almost the exact same. Now, if we lay these iPads one by one, the heaviness is insane. And I mean, look at the thickness. We have gone to 11 millimeters to essentially 8 millimeters to 7.5. Now, yeah, that's not a big difference from the iPad 2 to the iPad 3, but it is a little nice touch to know that you actually have a big difference coming from the iPad 1 to the iPad 2. So that is how ultimately that led to the rise of the iPads. If it weren't for the redesign, we would not have the modern iPads we know today. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Love you all. God bless.